The Colts have added another of their own to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, while another deserving candidate is going to have to wait yet another year. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks, which is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. What is up, everybody? I am Jake Arthur, joined by my twin flame, Zach Hicks. You know, the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com. No, I don't know if you guys have seen that docu-series, but not great. You're not going to hate anyone more than you hate that guy that you've never met. So if you guys haven't already, you got to check that out. But no, today we're talking about the Hall of Fame, speaking of things that fans hate. And Dwight Freeney got in for the Colts. That is terrific. Kind of a trailblazing edge rusher for the Colts for a long time. But one of the biggest fan favorites in the franchise's entire history, Reggie Wayne, is going to have to wait yet another year. So we're going to kind of talk about those two extremes. And then we'll talk about some current Colts or, you know, some recently former Colts who might have that trajectory, or what some guys maybe on the fringe of that, what they might have to do in order to ultimately make the Hall of Fame. So first up, Dwight Freeney, pretty deserving. He's had to wait a little bit now. This was his second year of eligibility. He goes in with Devin Hester, Julius Peppers, Andre Johnson, and Patrick Willis as the other modern day entries. And yeah, his resume speaks for itself. 18th all time in the NFL in sacks, third in forced fumbles all time. 16-year career. The guy's longevity was terrific. He had 4 All-Pros, 3 first teams, 7 Pro Bowls, and something that has become kind of a really important piece lately and has set a lot of the guys over the edge. He was on the 2000s All-Decade team. So really, really important things that Freeney accomplished that put him over the edge to really give him that Hall of Fame resume. So what do you think about him getting in, Zach?
Yeah, just for me to jump on here first, I mean, when I think of the early 2000s Colts, and this is me as, a young kid growing up in the 2000s, falling in love with football. I wasn't obviously a huge Colts fan back then. I grew up in the Washington market, but I always admired the Colts from afar. And when I think of those early 2000s Colts teams, obviously you think of Peyton Manning, you think of Marvin Harrison, you think of those guys on offense, but Dwight Freeney on defense was the guy. Like, that was the guy that was the difference maker. I mean, when you think of the number 93, for me personally, as a kid who grew up in the 2000s and fell in love with football in the 2000s, you think of Dwight Freeney. That was the big time guy right there on defense. And I think, you and I talked about it before we jumped on here, Jake, like when you're a pass rusher who has a move that is synonymous with your name, that spin move, the Dwight Freeney spin move, where when you think of, the greatest spin move or the greatest player at this one move as a pass, you have your name with that. Like, that is something that you can never take away from a player. That's something that is always going to go down with Dwight Freeney. So yeah, I think it's a really, really good thing. I mean, he was that difference maker on defense for his entire career. Fantastic player. And it was really great to watch him. So I want to get your thoughts on it, especially Jake, because you're a little bit older than me. You were there for all of those great Colts teams, and you're a big Colts fan back then. What was it like watching Dwight Freeney in his prime? I mean, again, obviously people don't think of the Colts back in the 2000s for their defense, but seeing an all-time great like this, I mean, it was fantastic to see him on the field just from afar.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of makes you spoiled about having, an all-star pass rusher because, the Colts are known for getting spoiled with the quarterbacks and everything, but we've really come to find out how important it is to have that dominant edge rusher as well, which the Colts have really been searching for since Freeney left. You had a few years of it still with Robert Mathis afterward, but you just kind of chase that, that island, I guess you can say. It's kind of the same as having an all-pro cornerback. You set him out there, and there's going to be a lot of resources thrown to try and counter that, but it's really, really invaluable. The Colts were lucky enough to have a guy like Robert Mathis on the other side where you just had to pick your poison. But Freeney was definitely a trendsetter in the NFL. We've seen a lot more people try to emulate that spin move ever since he really put his stamp on it. And I think really one of the more impressive parts of it all is he was not really your prototypical edge rusher. He's kind of small. I think he was about 6'1" or so, 260 something or around that area. A stockier guy, not your classic, long-limbed, super bendy edge rusher. But the guy had speed to power. He had agility. He could really do it all. And something that Jim Irsay, I think he said this to Kwity Paye and Dayo Odengbo when they were coming in with the Colts, we envision you in the fourth quarter, closing out games, pinning your ears back and winning games for us, because that's what Dwight Freeney did. When the Colts needed it most, you had a guy like Dwight Freeney going out there getting the sacks and, more importantly, getting the forced fumbles. Robert Mathis first in NFL history, Dwight Freeney third. That was so important because getting sacks, getting pressures is nice, but turning the ball over, that's invaluable, especially when you're then giving the ball to Peyton Manning. So Dwight Freeney's impact was just really immeasurable.
Yeah. I feel like I've been blessed as a football fan to have been around for the prime years of so many great pass rushers. When I was younger, you got guys like Dwight Freeney and Julius Peppers and Jared Allen, obviously, is another guy that was up there, and those type of pass rushers. And then as you get into my teenage years and stuff like that, you get Von Miller, J.J. Watt, and Aaron Donald, and then nowadays, obviously, Micah Parsons and Bosa's and the other Watt, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, fantastic pass rushers. But for me personally, and this isn't just me saying that because I'm a host on the Locked On Colts podcast here, I don't think I could put five guys over Dwight Freeney. Like when I saw Dwight Freeney was up for the ballot the last couple of years, I think it was like he's been on the ballot for I think 2 years now. This was third year up there. I was always shocked that he wasn't a first ballot guy because, again, when I think of pass rushers and I think of pass rushers in the grand scheme of football, Dwight Freeney is one of the first guys that come to mind for me. I know I don't have as long an experience with the NFL as many people do, but Dwight Freeney is one of the first guys that pops up to me, and I'm really happy to see him enshrined in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he really deserves it. Fantastic player, absolute difference maker, absolutely deserved to be in that all 2000s decade team because he defined the 2000s as a pass rusher. And just a well-deserved honor to get him in the Hall of Fame for the Colts.
Yeah, so that's the sweet part of it. We'll go to kind of the sour part in a minute and talk about, maybe when is Reggie Wayne going to get his time to get into the Hall of Fame? PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to turn every game-changing moment into 100 times your money. With as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. It's demon time on PrizePicks also. That means you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You just turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at PrizePicks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins gets you different payouts. So that means you can now win up to 100 times your money, again, with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is really cool because they're always looking at new things like this demon and goblins thing to keep everyone engaged because, you always got to evolve. At the end of the day, what sets you apart, and PrizePicks is another place that is continually adding these cool new wrinkles to their platform. Again, they're really simple to play. Personally, I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than a minute. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, so Reggie Wayne, who, for my money, growing up in Indianapolis as a Colts fan, I've got to say that Reggie might have just been my favorite player growing up. You know what I mean? Like, you had Marvin Harrison, who was really a huge impact from day one. But Reggie really had to grow into this thing. And he started flourishing with Peyton Manning after just a few years. He goes into it. But what I think where Reggie really had one of his biggest impacts was big games, number one. But number two, the guy came in and helped usher Andrew Luck into the NFL so successfully. Like, we saw immediately that Luck had magic in him, and he could do things that not everyone could. He pulled the Colts into the playoffs, but an enormous part of that was Reggie Wayne. Like, you take Wayne out of the equation for Luck early in his career, and it does not look the same. I believe he's got the most games in franchise history as well, like over 200. The guy ranks 10th all time in receptions and receiving yards. Again, he's been a finalist, not just a semifinalist, but a finalist for 5 straight years now. I think wide receiver is probably the most polarizing position when it comes to players getting in the NFL. There's always been this logjam, and for some reason, voters shy away from allowing multiple guys in at once. Like, I don't really know why, but Reggie seems like one of the last guys, like along with Torrey Holt, one of the last guys who's kind of a victim of this logjam. And hopefully it ends soon, and we could kind of turn over a new leaf and just let the deserving guys get in when they need it.
Yeah. I struggle a lot with Reggie Wayne, and it's not because I don't think he's, a guy that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I definitely think he's a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Just a fantastic player throughout his entire career. And like you said, I think one of the biggest things for him was when he made that jump from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck, and he had that production in that first year with Andrew Luck. I think that's what put him over the edge a little bit for me. It's like, okay, look, there's no Marvin Harrison. He's an older wide receiver, and he's doing fantastic things with a brand new quarterback in there. So yeah, I think he was doing a lot of really great things there with the Colts. And I don't have any issue with anybody saying that he should have got in this year, especially when a guy like a Devin Hester got in. I think Devin Hester definitely deserved to get in at some point, but if it's at the expense of someone like Reggie Wayne, it doesn't really make too much sense for me. So I do think Reggie Wayne should have got in. I do think I struggle a little bit more when it comes to, should Reggie Wayne have got in over Andre Johnson? I think you and I are on the same page with this, which doesn't make for great podcast banter, but I think it's good for us to be on the same page. I think personally I would take Andre Johnson over Reggie Wayne just because Andre Johnson was that dominant force despite having David Carr being his quarterback for most of his career and a guy like Matt Schaub as well. But that doesn't mean I don't think Reggie Wayne was this fantastic Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver. And I definitely don't think that he needs to keep getting pushed down the line because you're getting a guy like an Andre Johnson in there. So I think it's going to be tough for him going forward, man, because like you said, there's that log jam at wide receiver, and it's not like you can get a guy like Andre Johnson in here, and that's like, okay, cool. Now you lessen that log jam, but then coming up soon, we got Larry Fitzgerald coming up. I mean, Brandon Marshall, who I don't think has a case over Reggie Wayne, but Brandon Marshall's coming up. Demaryius Thomas comes up next year, who, again, I don't think he has a case over Reggie Wayne, but the more names you keep throwing into this log jam, the more it gets backed up. And where does Reggie Wayne fall on there? I definitely think Reggie Wayne should get in the next year or two. He absolutely deserves it. Great player. I mean, he has the resume, fantastic player all time, but it's going to be tough for him, man. It's going to be a really tough one. And it might be, another guy that we're going to mention here, it might be like a Torrey Holt situation where it just keeps backing up and keeps backing up. And a guy like Holt might get in over him because they feel bad enough to get Holt in there, even though I think Wayne maybe has a better resume than Torrey Holt even.
Yeah, it just sucks when you have to kind of go head to head with another guy of your position rather than just getting in when you should get in. Because again, you put Reggie Wayne against Calvin Johnson. Of course, Calvin Johnson has a bigger footprint in the NFL. Calvin Johnson is like the prototype wide receiver that everyone's looking for all the time now. Andre Johnson is as well a dominant receiver, played through really bad quarterback play a lot of his career. Having to go head to head with those guys, there's almost always going to be someone better. So just like at some point, the guy, his accomplishments just have to speak for themselves, because he's also top 10 all time in postseason receiving as well.
Right.
So you have a guy who is quite accomplished both in the regular and postseason. He wasn't on the all decades team, but he has also led the NFL in receiving yards. There was one year. He's got 6 Pro Bowls. Like, I mean, I don't know what much else he can do. And I mean, obviously, at the time that he retired, he ranked even higher in all those things.
Yeah.
So
No, he
yeah,
checks every single box you need. And
Mhm.
even for me, like I'm very strict when it comes to who I'd let in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Personally, I think people should be stricter when it comes to the Hall of Fame. Like you should be a top tier player at your position all time, or at least in the era that you played to get into the Hall of Fame. And Reggie Wayne was always a tough one for me because I was like, okay, was he ever really a top 5 wide receiver in the league? And I think, when you compare him to an Andre Johnson or a Calvin Johnson, maybe it doesn't feel like he was ever that type of dominant in the league or he was that kind of difference maker in the league. But again, we're talking a 3-time All-Pro, 1-time first-team All-Pro, led the NFL in receiving yards one year, produced in the playoffs, won a Super Bowl. He has the accumulation stats, 10th all-time in receptions, 10th all-time in receiving yards. Like you said, like what more could he have done? And maybe you hold the Marvin Harrison thing against him because he was the number 2 guy in this offense for so long, but are we really going to hold it against a guy that he just wasn't that he played alongside a top 5 receiver to ever play or a top 10
right.
receiver to ever play? Are we really going to hold that against the guy? So it's like, I don't know. I think it's a tough thing for him here. I don't really understand what's holding him back at this point. And again, while I understand, having Andre Johnson and Calvin Johnson over him, I think it sometimes the pendulum swings a little bit too far the other way. Like Peter King, I believe in his like article where he defends what he voted for with the Hall of Fame, which I think is great. Like he's one of the few writers that actually puts out why he voted a certain way when it comes to the Hall of Fame. But he had Reggie Wayne like outside his top 10 this year. He had Reggie Wayne like sitting at 12th going into next year and his early look at next year's stuff. Like, I think that's too far the other way. Like, I get not having him in this year because if you're going to take one wide receiver, you take Andre Johnson, but there's no way he's outside the top 10 this year or he's outside the top 12 next year. Like, this is a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Let's get him in. I mean, I don't care when it is at this point. I mean, I hope for Reggie it's soon because I can't imagine what that wait is like, just hoping that you get your name called every single year. But I hope it's not too long. He definitely deserves to get in the Hall of Fame. He is a Hall of Fame wide receiver. He'll get his name called eventually, but I really hope it's sooner rather than later for his sake here.
Yeah, I think people's main rebuttal to his candidacy is that he played with Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck his entire career, which is true. Like that obviously helps, but it's not like every receiver who played with those guys is going to the Hall of Fame. Like you have to be up to the task, especially to be a mainstay in Peyton Manning's offense. You had to be above the cut, like for Peyton Manning to trust you and to go to you on money downs and to throw game-winning touchdowns to you against the Patriots and things like that. Like you had to be a different dude. And he was. Like you don't see Donnie Avery out there just like thriving and, putting up a Hall of Fame resume. Like not everybody could do that just because they played with these guys. Like look at Patrick Mahomes this year, like someone who's already knocking on the GOAT conversation. But the biggest thing for him all year was people talk about he didn't have receivers. So just because these quarterbacks are elite doesn't mean every pass catcher there that's with them is elite. So that's my poo-poo on that argument for, playing with Peyton and Luck the whole time. Like it goes both ways. They make each other better. So I don't really know what else to go off on that one. But coming up, there's an interesting group of, current and recently former Colts that do have, a little bit of an argument to make the Hall of Fame eventually. But very few of them, if any, are like ready to go right now. So we'll talk about what these guys need to do to get in. DoorDash went all out for game day, and they DoorDashed stuff from all of the ads to one lucky winner. Cars, snacks, even tax software. And somehow they pulled it all off. I'm a little bummed I didn't win it. Nothing personal, but I got to hand it to them. It was one heck of a delivery. Wink, wink. If you didn't have a chance to hit the grocery store last weekend after the big game commotion, or maybe your bar cart has mysteriously been cleared out, stock back up for the week ahead with delivery from DoorDash, which is probably what I'm going to have to do because I am barren of groceries right now. Whatever watch party or anything party you've got coming up, get it delivered with DoorDash. Football season may now be over, but we're in the thick of basketball games, the school year, and let's face it, We know winter is not done. I could think of a million reasons daily to order DoorDash, so just hop on the app and make your day a little easier. Get dinner for tonight, groceries for the week, or a consolation prize for your sad friends in San Francisco, all on DoorDash. DoorDash, your door to more. Head to DoorDash app to get everything you need delivered. All right, so when we're talking about the Colts in the Hall of Fame, who's got next? So Robert Mathis has been a semifinalist 3 years in a row. He's got a pretty decent argument to get there. I think he finished his career with more sacks than Freeney. He's the Colts all-time sacker. He's first in NFL history in forced fumbles. So he's got that going for him. He's been a semifinalist. I'm surprised he hasn't made a finalist at some point. But, he's now got, like the Jared Allens of the world now that Dwight Freeney and Demarcus Ware are off the table. Like, he's going to have to go up against some of those, like, guys who are just like a step below the Freeneys and Wares. So you got Robert Mathis. Adam Vinatieri becomes eligible next year. That's interesting because do you put a kicker in the first ballot? Because he retired as the best kicker of all time.
Are you asking me actually here, Jake?
Even you can appreciate Adam Vinatieri, though. Like, I know you have your bias, but you know what Adam Vinatieri is to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, look, Robert Mathis, I think, guys, if we're talking about guys who can get in next year for the Indianapolis Colts, I think Robert Mathis is definitely the next guy up, in my opinion, from what I would do personally next up here. I think, but obviously, aside from Reggie Wayne, Robert Mathis, great player. I think he has a Defensive Player of the Year award, too, under his belt, which not many people have. And he also led the NFL in sacks one year. Like, fantastic player. And I do believe that now that Freeney is just out of his way on the ballot, we're going to start seeing him moved up into those finalist rankings. So Robert Mathis, I think we'll start seeing him get closer and closer going forward. And then, yeah, I mean, if I have to talk about a kicker, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I guess the kicker can get in. I mean, I don't. Now, Adam Vinatieri, I mean, look, I know what it was like for a lot of Colts fans growing up when you have Mike Vanderjagt as your kicker for so long, and then you finally get Adam Vinatieri, and it's like, oh, wow, we can actually advance in these playoff games now because we have a kicker who can make big kicks. And that's a valuable thing there. So, look, if I'm going to say anything positive about a kicker, finally going from Vanderjagt to Vinatieri and having a kicker who could make the big kick, I think that's certainly Hall of Fame worthy. So, yeah, let's get Vinatieri in there sometime. I don't know if it should be a first ballot thing or whatever with that. But, yeah, Vinatieri will get in here eventually. Greatest kicker of all time. And whatever you want to say with that, I'm sure he'll get in here in the next couple of years.
See, it's not the greatest crop of first-year eligible guys next year. So I think it's certainly possible. Like, I don't feel like you have any, like, no doubt about it next year. You got, like, Marshawn Lynch. And there's some guys who are deserving.
Eli?
That's you saying that. Like,
that's not me saying that. That's look. Again, if we're going off of the story of the NFL, or whatever, can you tell the story of the NFL without this average quarterback who caught fire twice? Like, yeah, Eli Manning will probably get in. I mean, and in first ballot next year. If we're looking at first ballot next year, who the most likely one is probably Luke Kuechly.
Yeah.
Luke Kuechly feels like the type who,
I agree,
unless they want to hold the early retirement against him, but they didn't do that against Calvin Johnson, so I don't think they will against him. Kuechly probably gets in first ballot. I think Eli and Vinatieri have decent chances first ballot, but yeah, I mean, I don't think first ballot's going to be too log jammed next year. So maybe a guy like Mathis, or again, fingers crossed, hopefully Wayne can finally get in next year.
Yeah, I think when you look at next year's ballot, you have Kuechly, who, whenever you talked about the best, like from his rookie year, I'm pretty sure, I think he immediately stepped on the scene. Him and Patrick Willis, interchangeable as the best linebackers in the NFL when you look at it. And Willis is going in now until the day he retired. So you've got that. And then Vinatieri, when he retired, everyone considered essentially to be the best kicker of all time. So you've got two guys who you can consider like they were the cream of the crop. But we do have some other Colts to look at here as well. So we'll go with a guy who's not on the Colts anymore, but I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame when he retires. That's Stephon Gilmore. Yeah. He's got the hardware. He's got the Super Bowl. He's got the Defensive Player of the Year, sustained excellence over like a decade. Like, I think Gilmore's in. The Colts are just going to be a footnote on his journey, but that's a guy who made an impact with the Colts in his 1 year here, but I think he doesn't have anything left to accomplish. He's in.
We will absolutely be that team where in 20 years from now, when people are like, oh yeah, do you remember that really good corner for the Patriots? And someone's like looking at the Wikipedia and being like, oh yeah, like where did he end up at the end of his career? He played a year with the Colts. He played a season with that'll be us when it comes
Stud.
to looking at his Hall of Fame thing. But yeah, Stephon Gilmore, absolutely a Hall of Famer. Some other guys you put on here, they're like, I think Quentin Nelson is a really fun one to look at, because I honestly think when you look at the grand scheme of things, when it comes to just guards in the Hall of Fame and stuff, like Quentin Nelson could probably be in the Hall of Fame if he's retired right now. Like we're talking about
Probably.
4-time All-Pro, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 6 Pro Bowls. I mean, if you look at the amount of Pro Bowls he's already accumulated in his career, I want
Every
to
year.
say, yeah, I want to say he's already like top like 6 or 7 in Colts history in Pro Bowls. Like
Probably.
he's not even 30 yet. He's not even 30. He's like 28. Like this is a guy who's going to be going down as one of the greatest guards to ever play the game when it's all said and done. So I just want to say to Colts fans listening to this and Colts fans who watch every Sunday, obviously admire the greatness that you have in Quentin Nelson. Like even in his down years, you're watching an all-time great offensive guard every single week. Now, you would rather that be a quarterback, obviously, than an offensive guard, but this is an all-time great future Hall of Fame guard that we get to watch every single weekend. And I don't think people appreciate that enough. I mean, this is truly like, I don't think first ballot Hall of Fame type career right now, but like second or third ballot Hall of Fame career. I think that's what we're looking at with Quentin Nelson right now.
Yeah, I think so. He, like, if he ended today, he would have a compelling argument whenever he became eligible. But on the trajectory he's on, he's probably going to add another, at least 1 or 2 All-Pros. Again, he's been in the Pro Bowl every year since he's been in there. If the Colts start having some postseason success, that'll be huge.
Right.
But a couple guys who aren't as likely, but like the things they've done in the first halves of their careers, if they can keep it up or like push even to another level for a couple years, DeForest Buckner and Jonathan Taylor. So Taylor's kind of got the lost season. Really, if you look at 2022 and 2023, that's going to be tough to, he's going to have more longevity than a normal running back does. But he's got a rushing title to his name, a first-team All-Pro, a first-team or a Pro Bowl as well. The Colts have a long, rich history of Hall of Fame running backs, and he had arguably the best season of all of them in 2021. So I think in terms of running backs, like it's obviously judged a little different. If he can string together like 6 more really, really good seasons, 6, 7 more really, really good seasons, I think he has a compelling argument. But it's going to be tough just because running backs just don't last as long anymore.
No. And he would need another 1 or 2 seasons similar to 2021, I think, to really propel himself into that conversation. So I don't think it's like outside the realm of possibility for him, but it's probably unlikely. And then same with Buckner as well. I mean, Buckner, 2-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, fantastically compelling case for just how great of a player he was, or he is. But I think the issue is he ran into this era of like just elite defensive tackle play across the league. I mean, and when he was in the NFC, he was competing with Aaron Donald every year for these All-Pros and Pro Bowls. Comes over to the, to the AFC even. You got Chris Jones and Cameron Hayward and those types in front of him. And that's not even to mention the just numerous amounts of guys who are just exploding onto the scene with, Quinnen Williams, Dexter Lawrence, like these types of guys that are just fantastic potential Hall of Fame guys as well. So it's tough for him, man. I mean, he needs to have at least another All-Pro type season in there. And you know what? He might need like a Super Bowl. He might need a Super Bowl win in there just to really put it over the top. But we'll see. I think he can get there. It's just, maybe more of a Ring of Honor type guy. He's definitely the best defensive tackle that I've seen in Indy. I don't think there's anyone really close in Indy for him. So I think that goes well for him, but I just don't know if Hall of Fame is really in the realm of possibility for him. I mean, we have one more guy on here. You put down Anthony Richardson. I don't know, Jake. It's a little early.
I did not. I purposely did not add him on there.
It's a little early, Jake, but I get it. I totally get it, man. But hopefully we'll see Anthony Richardson's name on this potential list next year, Jake, after we look at the greatest season ever in 2024 with him. But I think that's all we have for today, guys, looking at the Hall of Fame stuff. Before we go, though, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And if you don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks2, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'd love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here bright and early tomorrow morning.